Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Thursday night / evening, depending on wherever it is that you're joining us from. It's approximately 32 minutes past the top of the hour. Apologies for the slight delay in terms of our kickoff for this particular broadcast. It was not intentional, but due to some extenuating circumstances, I had to be late. So I hope you can bear with me and extend me the courtesy or the very usual kindness of staying up with me as we go through tonight's discussion. It's going to be a rich one. Once again, not so many things to talk about, and yet there is everything to talk about. The things that have made the rounds in the last, I think, about 24 hours or so, quite incredible, or even 48 hours by extension. I can see we already have a comment from Taba saying Cristiano won. I've not been able to watch that game today, but I was seeing some highlights from a goal scored by Kingsley Coman and the other scored by Cristiano Ronaldo, a direct free kick in that one, as Al Nassr won by 4 goals to 1 against Damak. I think it's Red Damak, yes. So as you know, as catching up on some of the highlights of that one, really, and I think it's incredible. First of all, the closer to winning it, actually they won it because that was the final game of the season with a small margin of 2 points. But that won't be the case. That won't be the topic of discussion. What the topic of discussion will be that Cristiano Ronaldo and Al Nassr have finally won it. Have finally won the league title. I wish I could say it's deserved in a way, and maybe it is, but what's the right word to use? I do not want to be wrong about this. Okay, the right thing to say is it is deserved, but of course, the sides that will feel perhaps hard done by, given some of the things that are transpired across the entirety of the campaign. It's the nature of football. It's something that we're talking about in the morning. For those of you that were part of the discussion with 10 United Road 10, we're going on and about when it came to the refereeing decisions and it's their overall impact in terms of the game and etc. Anyways, so guys, apologies. I'm just trying to have our audios tested just to make sure everything checks out before we proceed for this broadcast, because I know for a fact we've burnt our fingers before in terms of not having the audios present. Coming on here as listening onto that song by Right Said Fred. If it's called Stand Up by Right Said Fred. It's been on sort of my playlist for the last 24 or so hours, ever since Arsenal clinched the Premier League title. So, and the reason as to why it's been is growing up as an Arsenal fan, I have these memories, particularly 2 memories of Chelsea clinching the league title. And this is a personal story. It's one that I told recently in a different forum, not here, but allow me tell it here. Now, okay, before I tell the story, allow me send out my special shout outs to some of my people. Becky, Viola, thank you so much. Mwami Isaac, Steve, Inbara, Alex Agnite, Gladiator, Mitchell Winecourts, Mildred, Summer Banks, Taba, United Road, what's the Reluctant Gamer, Jesus JY815, Breadcrumbs, Pressing Kosi, TTH Vision, and every single one of you. Anfield the Red says on hold, no No Hall, Palmer, Foden, Maguire, Colwill, Shaw, and Tomori is mad. That's Anfield. Yeah, we're going to be digesting that. But before we get into that, like I said, I will start this podcast with a personal story about Arsenal's triumph for the Premier League title. It's one that I've told before, but in a different form. So you'll indulge me as I tell it here. Like I was saying, my earliest memories and understanding of the magnitude or the weight of a team being a champion, unfortunately, was Chelsea. I remember living with this nephew of mine who was a Chelsea fan. He loved Frank Lampard so much, and he raved about him so much. He was, a couple of years younger than I at the time. But listening to the radio, given I did not have access to TV at the time in terms of watching football, the only TV I had access to was that of Tom and Jerry on selected days. So I would listen in onto the radio, and they will play some of these songs. At the end of the season, when the team has won the league title, they will play that song, Stand Up for the Champions, by Right Said Fred. At the time, I didn't, actually until yesterday, I did not know who the artist was. So they would play that song, and as they played it, there's a way the song was played on radio, in conjunction with what appeared to be the sounds of fans within the stadium celebrating that sort of winning feeling. And of course, you're happy for one team that they've won it, but more so, you're sorry, or sort of, in a way, in sorrow, that it's not your team that has won it. At the time, I did not have the discernment to keep my emotions in check or to have a proper understanding of the game, to appreciate that the winner was the deserved winner. The question for me was always as simple as, why not us, at the time? So that song would play on for minutes and minutes. And I could not help it wonder when I would ever get to hear the song be played for my team when they won the Premier League title, and by extension, the UEFA Champions League, which by any stretch of a mile, it's never happened, of course, but at least that of the Premier League has happened. And this time around, I do not have to wait for the radio guy to play for me the song. I can simply turn it on and play it for myself. So that's the personal story I wanted to share with you guys. Rio Dandy says, hello, sir. Hello to you too, Rio Dandy. So to all the Arsenal fans, wherever you are, as you bask in your triumph, I would want to hear what your personal stories were growing up, or perhaps your journey with this team, and the feeling that I've had to witness on video from different parts of the world in how Arsenal fans have gone about their celebrations. Like I said, from the dusty streets of Kampala, down South Africa, to West Africa, to North Africa, and beyond, far beyond this continent, in the streets of Nairobi, the streets of London. I was watching a small clip by Cecil with a gentleman who's, I think he's called Curtis, and he was saying how he's walking around braggadociously like he's won the lottery. And it's just that feeling, and he's wondering, how can a team have so much power on you? How can a sport, a game like football, have that much power on you? Like, you do not feel it until you've either lost or you've won. That's when you realize the weight of the power, of the emotions that you carry with that team. So for some people, it's of that magnitude. Some people have cried, some people have done all sorts of things, all in celebration. Ariel Dandy says Chelsea is just getting sidelined by most of the national teams. Is that a feeling, or is it an objective assessment of your individual players to say that over the span of the entire season, maybe they have fallen short in one way or the other? So anyways, we'll park the Arsenal story to the side, because it's one we'll keep hammering on all through until the weekend, because it is on Sunday that they will be handed their trophy at Selhurst Park. And of course, the celebrations will go on, and then there will be a trophy parade. I think if nothing is left to chance, I think on the 31st of May, that will be Sunday after they played at the UEFA Champions League at the Puskás Arena in Budapest. I do not know what the result of that will be. I'm only hoping against hope that Arsenal do carry the day. So, anyways, this evening, big shots have been left out of the English squad for the World Cup as Thomas Tuchel prepares to announce his squad of 26 players that is summoned, or he will be summoning for the FIFA World Cup 2026. Obviously, before he even gets out on national TV to announce it or issue the publication, at least at the time of start of this broadcast, reports had already started to seep through, or rumors or grapevine were seeping through the cracks in the walls of the FA to suggest or to tell us what teams have, what players have missed out on the call, or the kind of players that we should not expect to be on that list. Hey, did you check upon why I couldn't super chat you last time? Any notifications by YouTube? Not really. Actually, I checked and everything is fine on my end. In any case, I think yesterday, Breadcrumbs was able to afford me a cup of coffee of about, I think 1.99 USD. So I think you'll have to, maybe you'll have to attempt again on your end and see if it can go through. But as far as my side is concerned, I think everything checks out well. I've not received any notification whatsoever to the effect of any impending issues that would forfeit me from receiving, a tip or a cup of coffee. Yes, thank you. So it's on your end, Rio Dandy. But thank you so much for that. You say, I live in Asia. That's why. Oh, I didn't know there were limitations to Asia, because the other day, somebody called Ash is a Barcelona fan, and they're friends with Reluctant Gamer from the UK, was able to buy me a cup of coffee as well. A couple of days back, maybe the other week or so. I do not know how it all works, to be honest. I'm just as new to this as probably you could be in terms of buying somebody a cup of coffee. So unfortunately, I cannot speak you to the technicalities. My only prayer would be that maybe you'll, at your most convenient time, you'll have another attempt and see if you can crack that code. But thank you so much, Rio Dandy, for your show of kindness. So as the news seeped through, about, unlike Anfield here, the Red has already enlisted it for us. No Lewis Hall, Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Harry Maguire, Levi Colwill, Luke Shaw, Fikayo Tomori are some of the early names that we have received as misses for the World Cup squad for England. Now, looking at these names critically enough, I do not think I'm too surprised that these guys have missed out. However, until I get the full list of those that have been summoned, I find it a little bit difficult for myself to scrutinize this list and say this one definitely could not come at the expense of the other. That sort of situation, because I'd want to think that in the omission of a player like Harry Maguire, you have Mark Gay in there, you have Enzo Konsa, in there, and of course the questions are going to be who else, because that's the core. Harry Maguire has been so regular a show for this team that even during his worst days at Manchester United, particularly under the charges of Erik ten Hag, Gareth Southgate still found it within his intuition to still summon him for the national team. And he obviously went on to play really well for him. He was a diligent servant. And it sort of became a constant that regardless of what was happening with him at club level, that you almost had him. But also, you must remember that Thomas Tuchel is a bit non-PC. So he's the kind of guy that is going to do what he feels is right, as opposed to what you or you and I may think should be the popular choice. He has that sort of element about him. It's more like he'll die by his own cross. In other words, he'll do what he believes is right, not what he thinks is PR right, because sometimes you get the feeling that there's that bit of element when these national teams are being selected. I've said it time and again during the course of this season, and particularly when it was pertaining national teams, that the challenge for England, you had Jude Bellingham, you have an Eberechi Eze, you have a Morgan Rogers, you have a Cole Palmer, you have a Phil Foden. Now, that's 4 number 10s literally at your disposal. Now, it's fair to say that Cole Palmer has not had a good, decent season in terms of overall consistency. The same can be said for Jude Bellingham. The same can be said for Phil Foden. Whereas he has about 7 or 8 Premier League goals and a couple of assists, you do not feel that like consistently he has had a very decent season. It's Morgan Rogers that I was highlighting the other day, and he scored yesterday in the final of the UEFA Europa League. He scored the 3rd goal for Aston Villa. But that aside, he's had a 16 goal contribution, scoring 10 goals and providing six assists. That's fine in the Premier League, and they are, 4th on the Premier League table as things stand. So you said Tuchel is literally taking Bellingham in the team due to PR. Now, I understand that bit. There's always going to be an element of that, I do feel. Earlier on today, was it today or yesterday? I think the conversation was held yesterday. I was sharing in a TikTok forum with a couple of colleagues, including Vibezone, Mildred Chelsea, aka Mchala Enzo Fernandez, and a couple of other people whose names may not come off my fingertips. And we're having the discussion about the omission of Joao Pedro from the Brazil national team. And there's not much that made sense about it, given his overall sort of a success or individual performances with Chelsea in his debut campaign. And I thought he deserved to be there. And the question that I was asking of people was, who would you omit in that team to accommodate Joao Pedro? And then we know for a fact that Neymar, if anything, he was selected predominantly for PR reasons, but also for the pedigree that he has at the national team. It's not to say that he does not deserve to be there, because his pedigree speaks for itself. But you cannot help it escape the idea, the feeling of that sort of PR sort of element to it. So there's that bit to it as well. For those of you that have just joined us, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name. I hope all of you guys are doing well. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. I can see we have about 39 people. You can leave me a like. Tell me where you're joining us from. What team do you support? Are you a football fan? Let me know whatever part of the world you could be joining us from. Real Dandy, you say, if Maguire and Shaw aren't playing the World Cup, are Campbell and Ferdinand coming out of retirement? No, Campbell, of course, is not coming out of retirement. And I must be honest, Luke Shaw has had a decent season. Harry Maguire, right up there with him, especially for the second part of the season. And it is for the second part of the season that has qualified for Kobe Mainu to be in that squad, at least according to preliminary reports. Like I said, at the time of kickoff of this particular broadcast, I'd yet to see the full summoned list of players. There's one that appears on my screen at the moment, but I cannot stand on it definitively to read it out for you out loud to say that's the full squad. I am, because over the last couple of days, a couple of fake ones have made the rounds in terms of teams that have been summoned. I'll give you an example. This one particularly indicates John Stones and Levi Colwill, who, according to multiple reports, suggest that Levi Colwill is not part of this team. So that's why I cannot read it out for you in the entirety of it. So, but apparently Jordan Henderson has made the England squad, and now that's a hot take. Why? Jordan Henderson, besides his experience and maybe leadership qualities, I do not find standing ground or solid ground for him to be in this team in terms of his overall performances of the season, because he's not been a regular starter in that Brentford team. I've watched a couple of Brentford games where he's had to come off the bench, including that game against Arsenal. I think they won all draw. So what does that say? Now, of course, this sort of selection would have come at the expense of a player like Adam Wharton, in that sort of sense. But if like I said, because I do not have the entire squad that is being selected, I find it a bit difficult to scrutinize this, those that have been left out, because perhaps the same way I could make arguments against those, or to justify those that have been left out, I would be better placed to make better arguments if I know who is being included in the full sort of breadth of the squad. For example, the only thing or the only reason as to why you would choose a Jordan Henderson over Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton is the experience and the leadership qualities. When it comes to footballing merits, in as far as this season is concerned, I'd place Adam Wharton above Jordan Henderson. So it's that simple for me, That's how I would want to look at it, But the question is it the case, So let's wait to see when we get the entire sort of when we get the entire team sheet or someone's squad. Okay, but this is according to Ben Jacobs. He talks about the likes of Ivan Toney has been summoned back to the team. He's been doing fairly well over there in the Saudi Pro League. I've not kept so much good tabs with him, but he's been doing okay. Kobe Mainu is in the team, as mentioned earlier on. Then we're talking about a player who, until Michael Carrick's arrival to the team, was rotting away on the Manchester United bench. It's so sad that Diego Jota could not play a single World Cup. That's very unfortunate. I think that's it's been the saddest story of football prior to the start of this season and all throughout this season. Every reflection of that, because it was a double tragedy, I think it's a painful one, not just for Liverpool fans and Portuguese fans, but for the whole football community. Then, of course, he adds on that no Harry Maguire, no Adam Wharton, and then Luke Shaw is also missing. Then no Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Lewis Hall. Now, Lewis Hall has had some good phases in the season. And particularly, I took keen interest in him when I saw his sort of man of the match kind of performance against Barcelona in the first leg. At the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League, he was so good. He was so good against Lamine Yamal. And then even in the reverse fixture, he was good. So much so that he's been linked with some potential big moves. Whether those do materialize, we are waiting to see. But for now, his omission is there. Now, in the case of his omission and Luke Shaw, then the question is, who is going to be England's left back? Are there chances that in these final stages of the season, the sort of performances that Thomas Tuchel has seen of Miles Lewis-Kelly, he's been convinced that he needs to return back to the boy? Because remember, at the start of the season, he was getting those summons for the England national team. And then, of course, because due to limited game time at Arsenal, he missed out on a couple of calls. And I think particularly that match, that match brought squad of about 30, was it about 35 players or so? He missed out on that one. And he was getting to the was it under 21? Yes. And you thought, yeah, it's just fine. He's not been playing that much. He's in the same bracket with an Ethan Nwaneri, a Max Doman, to say the least. But in the final stages of the season, in the last about, I think, 5 or 6 games thereabouts, actually, you go back to the Fulham game, you go back to the Atletico de Madrid game, and the subsequent game, where he featured for Arsenal and his performances were quite stellar. Maybe if you're Thomas Tuchel, you're thinking, I go with Miles Lewis-Kelly, with whom I can shoot 2 birds with one stone, that if push comes to shove, he can play for me in midfield, but more importantly, you're taking him as a left back, something like that. So it could be part of the school of thought that is going on here. Then Ollie Watkins is part of the team, from what I gather. Ebeleche Eze from unconfirmed sources. Unconfirmed reports. Apparently, Arsenal have about 4 players on that list. They have Bukayo Saka, Ebeleche Eze, Noni Madueke, and Declan Rice. So Miles Lewis-Kelly is not a confirmation. It's only speculation, because Lewis Hall and Luke Shaw are reported to have been omitted from that squad. So it is speculative in nature. So guys, do not quote me the wrong way about this, Then, so all that conversation is ongoing about that England squad. And like I said, some are going to be a bit of hot takes. They're going to cause a bit of controversy. Now, let me tell you how the English media behaves. At every major tournament, I've never, all through my adult, sane, clearly understanding football life, there's not been a single major tournament where the England national team have summoned a squad for a major tournament and the media were in consensus, 100% of the team that was summoned, and not made calls for some of those that may have been excluded. You see, the thing about these squad selections or national team selections is that, first and foremost, your pedigree at the national team earns you a call. For example, I think regardless of the kind of season Harry Kane would have had at Bayern Munich, he would have earned the call. Why? He's of that experience. He's bought himself the pedigree and the test of time to know that he's one of those guys that you can really, really count on to deliver at the England national team. So there are those sorts of examples. But also, just like a striker or any other player on the pitch, you're as good as your last game. You're as good as your last game, oftentimes. Of course, there are those, when you look at in retrospect, across the entire campaign, allow me to use the example of Martin Zubimendi at Arsenal. He's had a very good season. Now, towards the tail end of the season, for reasons including, but not limited to fatigue, among other things, his performances started to drop off. And he was omitted from the starting 11, but was still being given minutes. Now, I cannot make the argument that just because he's not been a key performer at the tail end of the season, then suddenly he should be omitted from the Spanish national team squad. No, you cannot make that argument. But also, more importantly, the sort of form you're in at the tail end of the season helps determine whether you qualify to be part of that squad or not. And I've given you the example of Mazuri Skiri, and I'm not saying he's there, but I won't be surprised if he is there. But the prime example that you need is Kobe Mainu, because for the first half of the season, he was literally a nobody. He was a no-go zone, And we're talking about a player who, in 2024, played in the finals of the Euros when England played and lost to Spain by 2-1. So that's the context. That when you look at that Chelsea squad, and you ought to make a case for somebody, let's be honest. Until yesterday, when Chelsea played Liverpool, and the subsequent game, obviously, what was the subsequent game was against what? Of course, there was a final in the FA Cup. Then more recently, there was a game against Tottenham Hotspur, and he did not even start that game. So it's really, really hard to make a case for Levi Colwill. He's a good defender, but let's be honest, his season has been close to non-existent through injury. Abdul Walid says, "Hi, Abdul Walid. Good to have you back on the channel. I know it's not your first time here. Your name sounds familiar. At least it does ring a bell." So, anyways, when you're sort of analyzing or assessing some of these squads, you ought to bear in mind that there's a couple of contexts that you ought to put into it. There are players whose experience at the national team, the performances over time, give them the nod, regardless of what you may think of their seasons. And that is the argument that I was making for Jordan Henderson at the expense of Adam Wharton, that if I were going to go on footballing merit, as far as this season is concerned, there's no way I'm putting Jordan Henderson above Adam Wharton. But because of his experience and leadership qualities, maybe that's what he gets the nod. Now, you have a player like Alexander Trent-Arnold. I do not know if he's part of this squad. I remember him missing out on the previous one, of that 35 main squad. He missed out on that one, and everybody was trying to make the case of how do you summon 35 England internationals and you don't have Alexander Trent-Arnold? Yes, he's not had the perfect season in terms of a debut campaign with Real Madrid, particularly because of injuries and that, but he's that experienced enough, Now, and this takes me back to the point that I was starting to drive home before I deviated from it about the English media. The English media oftentimes behaves like an everyday fan of football. When you have a head coach or a manager do A and it doesn't work out, but before even it works out or not, you're already arguing, why did he not go with B or with C? Now, on a day that he goes with option B and C, you come back to make a case or an argument for A, Hello, Gladiator. Yes, I'm good. Good to have you back. So we are going through, have been offline all day. I did notice because today we were not in our usual space with Nando Live. Today it was Becky that extended us the courtesy of hosting us for our football conversation before I dropped off when the conversation I think took a different direction, but I chipped in for other things anyways. So we're talking about the England squad, and news is coming through about some of the players that have been omitted from the England squad. And according to preliminary reports, because we do not have a confirmation of the whole squad or the final squad, we've not gotten an official release of that. What we have is the speculative grapevine online. And according to multiple reports, as you can see there in the comment section, Abdul Walid, thank you so much for the cup of coffee. Abdul just gave me £2 there. Thank you so much. Much appreciated, my brother, for the contribution. You become the 50th person to do that for me, to extend the courtesy for me on the channel. So, Gladiator, yes, Lewis Hall at Newcastle, Cole Palmer from Chelsea, Phil Foden from Manchester City, Harry Maguire from Manchester United, Levi Colwill from Chelsea, Luke Shaw from Manchester United, and as well as Fikayo Tomori from AC Milan have all not been summoned to the England national team squad, according to preliminary reports. And like I was saying, I find it a little bit difficult for me to make a full-blown argument for or against the decisions before I have a full picture of those that have been summoned. But among them, according to the likes of Ben Jacobs, is that Jordan Henderson from Brentford is in. And I was saying that I wouldn't put him above Adam Wharton in as far as this is on his performances go, beyond his experience and leadership that he brings to the table when it comes to footballing merit. I would put Adam Wharton above him. Then you also, I would want to suspect, of course, there are some players that we do not expect to miss out on that squad. Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, that's for, some of those that come, Bukayo Saka, Harry Kane, Enzri Konsa, Mark Kehi, Jordan Pickford. I would want to think that Dean Henderson is going to be part of that squad. Then is it going to be James Trafford? Is it going to be Aaron Ramsdale? Is it going to be Nick Pope as the third choice goalkeeper? I do not know. We wait to see. Then you have apparently Noni Madueke is making the squad. Eberechi Eze is making the squad. Who else? I'm trying to think, and if you guys can remember any names off of your fingertips, you can get them through. I'm anticipating that with the omission of Phil Foden and Cole Palmer means definitely that that Jude Bellingham could be coming into that squad. That is my anticipation. And as talking about the hypocrisy, somebody made a very bold, but I thought it was a stupid statement, by the way, to say. I thought it lacked logic in terms of the basis of the merit of the argument. This person said on national TV that if Jude Bellingham is not part of their squad for the World Cup and they do not win the World Cup, it will be because they did not take Jude Bellingham. And I'm thinking to myself, is Jude Bellingham the greatest English football player of this generation? He could be among them, but I do not think he's the biggest at the moment. And he's not had that sort of season that you could pre-qualify that statement with him having a stellar season. He's not had the best season. So, I thought it was, I don't know, for lack of a better word, an illogical or maybe an emotional statement to say. And that's the thing about the English media. They behave like fans. They're always making a case for players that have been left out. But the one thing they never do is they never tell you which players should be struck out of that squad and accommodate others. There will be a few people that will make those arguments to say, okay, instead of going with Jordan Henderson, maybe you would have taken Adam Wharton. That kind of argument. But they'll be simply saying, how dare you leave Adam Wharton behind? They're not telling you who should be omitted to create space for, an Adam Wharton. That's usually my challenge with them. Gladiator says Tuchel is a mechanical, That's why he's calling such players. What about Kobe Mainu? Kobe Mainu is in, and I think he deserves to be there. I stand to be corrected. Wasn't it Cole Palmer that scored that consolation goal for England at the finals of the Euros? Not that it should directly qualify him to be there in that squad, but I understand where you're coming from. So, Kobe Mainu has made it to the squad, and we're talking about a player who under Michael Carrick has thrived so well by performances on the pitch, and yet for Ruben Amorim, he was an afterthought, and almost or oftentimes not even part of his memory in terms of usage. And I always say, if one of the issues I had with Ruben Amorim, and it was not to say he was a bad manager, but his lack of flexibility, and that rigidity to say, yeah, Bruno Fernandes has to be playing in my number 8. That's where I had the bone to pick with him. And that's where I thought he was getting some of these things wrong. Farouk, you say, should Bellingham leave space for Morgan? Now, Morgan Rogers, for me, is a no-brainer. He's a no-brainer. He's been quite a bit consistent over the last 2 seasons. Remember, he joins Aston Villa in January. Was it January 2023? Was it? Or 2024 from Middlesbrough. And last season, 2024-2025, he had an 18-goal contribution in as far as only the Premier League was concerned. He scored about 8 goals and provided 10 assists. This season, he scored 10 goals and provided 6 assists. And he just scored in the final. He's been quite pivotal in their journey to the triumph of the UEFA Europa League. So out of all the number 10s that England have, in Cole Palmer, in Morgan Rogers, in Phil Foden, in Jude Bellingham, I think he's had the better season amongst all of them, including of Eberechi Eze. Yes, Eberechi Eze may be a Premier League champion, but in terms of overall consistency across the entire campaign, I think Morgan Rogers has done slightly better than him. So for me, he's a no-brainer. You have to accommodate him in that squad, or he has to be there. Whether he goes on to start games or otherwise, that's a whole different story. And I was also saying, I do not know, with the omission of Lewis Hall and Luke Shaw, according to preliminary reports, I have a sneaky feeling that maybe it could imply that he's found space for Miles Lewis-Kelly. And we're talking about a player who, he's not had a tremendous season. He's had very limited playing time. But at the tail end of the season, he's been called upon and he's played well. Really, he played in midfield. Thomas Tuchel could be thinking, yeah, I take him as a left back, but if push comes to shove, he can help me in midfield. Or depending on how my team is going to play, if I think I need an inverting fullback, he could be the guy that executes that for me. So there's also that school of thought. Otherwise, my memories of the English left backs beyond Luke Shaw and Lewis Hall are not, do not come easily off of my fingertips. Those are some of the big, headlines making the stories. And I understand one wanting to make a case for a player like Cole Palmer. I would understand why they would want to make a case for him. But I do not think that across the entirety of the season, if you're being honest enough and being objective, beyond bringing the, sometimes we football fans are a bit sentimental with certain players. We want their inclusion simply because we think, first of all, on merit, we think they are capable of good moments. And they're capable of delivering. But remember, you judge on your season performances, but also your recent form. That's also a big take when you're being summoned for a major tournament like this. You seldom do you get to see players that have been out of form the entire season being summoned, and the hope is that they will pick their form when they're at the tournament. No, they take those that are in that sort of feel good factor about themselves, for whom things are really, really happening. Abdul Wadid says, why is Phil Foden and Cole Palmer not in the squad? Again, your guess is as good as mine, but that's what I was saying. That to be fair, when you look at the merits of it, in terms of how the entire season has gone, I do not think. Remember, Cole Palmer suffered those growing injury issues, and his season has been a bit sort of cold in comparison to his first two seasons with Chelsea, because when you go back to his first to last season, he scored 15 goals and provided 8 assists. When you go back to the debut campaign, I think he had close on to almost a 30 goal involvement in as far as the Premier League alone was concerned. Let me see if I can find those numbers quite quickly in as far as Cole Palmer was concerned, because he scored 22 goals and provided 11 assists. I stand to be corrected on that, Gladiator, on the particulars of those numbers for Cole Palmer for his debut campaign. So, on the merits of those seasons, the first two campaigns, he would merit to be part of this team. But when you're going on the basis of this season alone, you may be thinking otherwise, if you're being honest enough, because this season he scored about 9 goals, I think, and provided only 1 assist. He's made 25 appearances, I think, in the Premier League, 2 of them being as a substitute. So you can see his overall availability has not been as good, and then overall performances. Then when you take it to a player like Phil Foden, Phil Foden also has not had a very decent season, really, if we're being honest, with Man City. Yes, he's had flashes. There's some games that he's played and you're like, oh, maybe this is the Phil Foden that we saw in the 2023-2024 campaign. And actually, no. Yes, when you go back to that treble winning season of 2022-2023, when they win the UEFA Champions League, the Premier League title, and the FA Cup, and maybe by extension, was it the subsequent season? But he's had 2 dull seasons where he's not lived to the billing. This season, he scored 7 goals and provided 5 assists. When you're drawing comparisons to the player that you saw in the 2022-2023 campaign, you'll acknowledge that this is such a bit of a drop-off. In that season, he had 11 goals and 5 assists. Then it was 2023-2024 that I think he had his best season in a Manchester City jersey with 19 goals and 8 assists. So again, it becomes a bit of an issue if we are being honest. Okay, let me have a look at your comments. It's been a cold season for Cole Palmer. Yes, thank you. Then Farouk, you add for us that Palmer, first season with Chelsea, 25 goals and 15 assists across 45 appearances in all competitions. Thank you so much. Now, that sort of performance, that's a 40 goal involvement in 45 appearances. Nobody would argue against that. That's why it was a no-brainer going into Euros 2024. It was simply a given that he had to be there. Bro, skipped my message. Gradao Games. I did skip your message. What message did I miss? The last message that you sent was you said you're a very cool guy. I like watching your lives. Very humble and respectful. That was the last comment of you that I remember on the night when I signed out before reading your final comment. Unless that's the one you're referring to, but I managed to capture it and saved it somewhere just in case. But I do not remember any other that I missed. Gradao Games. Meanwhile, he joins us from Brazil. In terms of Brazil squad, Pedro has been left out for no reason. Even Ancelotti apologized publicly. like I said, about the Brazil national team, we were having that conversation, and honestly speaking, I failed to find the logical reason to justify his omission. For a player like Richarlison and Rede, I completely understand. Now, while I was making an argument for Joao Pedro, I know for a fact that he's had a much better season than Gabriel Martinelli, who is accommodated in that squad. But I also appreciate the fact that one is a wing and the other plays as a striker / as a 10, even though Gabriel Martinelli can also play for you as a striker. But in terms of their numbers and overall contributions to their respective teams, I completely understand where you're coming from when it comes to Joao Pedro. He's been Chelsea's player of the season, in my humble opinion, when you look at the overall context of the season. On the other side, where you have a Gabriel Martinelli, and maybe I'm being nitpicking here when I pick up on Gabriel Martinelli, but he comes an example too quick that I think I stand to be corrected, but I think he scored only one Premier League goal. And that is the goal that he scored against Manchester City, the equalizer, in the 1-1 draw at the Emirates Stadium. Majority of his flashes of brilliancy or overall consistency were majority of it at the league phase of the UEFA Champions League, where he scored, I think, about 6 goals or so, So you have players like Endrick there. And by the way, Igor Thiago has had a brilliant season with Brentford, a tally of 22 goals. But trust me, looking at how Brazil plays, I'll be picking a Joao Pedro ahead of it and Igor Thiago. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but that would be my hot take, if it qualifies for a hot take, So if he did apologize publicly, then maybe, just maybe, he deserves it. And you see the thing about the Brazil national team. There's something about the Brazil national team. You see, football in Brazil is like, what should I compare it to? I think it's one of the most respected things there is in the country. When you watch families and players watching the national team head coach or manager read out a squad pre a major tournament, it's like a national budget is being read. It's like a president giving a State of the Nation address in a country that listens. It's a national event. So the significance of it is that big. And then missing out, you being part of that team, is of great importance, is history in the making in itself, regardless of what you eventually do at the final tournament. So we saw clips of players like Neymar breaking down into tears when, when they were summoned. And you'd want to think that maybe if a person like Neymar, he's been there so many times that maybe missing this World Cup wouldn't be the worst thing to happen to him, And yet it's such a big deal. Okay, retreating back to some of your comments. Gradao Game says, I want to come to Brazil. Any invitations? Okay, you'll be very welcome here. Then Pedri joins us from Spain. Tuchel hasn't named his squad yet, just to correct you. No, I've not read out any squad that is mentioned. I've continuously mentioned that according to preliminary reports and rumors, these are some of the players that have been reported to have been omitted and some of those that I believe to have been included. And like I've been arguing, I cannot argue to full-gone conclusions in favor or against those that have been left out or been brought in without me having the full squad. So I wouldn't make that, broadcasting mistake really. It will be broadcast murder for me if I took that stand. Hi, Reluctant Gamer. Good to have you back on the podcast. Okay. Then Abdul Walid says, I think Neymar is injured, so he might get a chance. Neymar is not injured. That's according to Gradao Games responding. At the time of summoning him, he's not injured. unless something happens between now and prior to the start of the tournament. Because as much as we hate injuries, they are part of this game, and sometimes they happen. Unfortunately, very, very unfortunately. Farouk says Pedro was the one lighting the candle in the darkness of Chelsea, and when given chance, he never delivered at the national duty, and Ancelotti had no option rather than Neymar was coming in shape, so he lost it. Now, you see, that's the unfortunate bit about the national team. And I said this, I think yesterday, that unfortunately, you do not get so many chances with the national team. Why? Because there is not time for you to prove yourself. Why? Because the national team games come once in a while, especially when it comes to qualifiers and international friendlies. At most, during a calendar year, if there's no major tournament in between, you get to play about anywhere between 6 to 8 games. If there's too many, and I do not remember to be too many, you may play 10. I'll give you an example. You have the March international break where you'll play 2 games. You'll have in June, around June, you could have there some games. Depending on the circumstances, it's not predominantly on the calendar. You could play some 2 games. That would make it 4. Then you'd have the September international break where you play 2 games. That makes it 6. Then the October international break, that would make it 8. And then the November international break. So that's what could make it 10. But remember, June is not a given. So that's where you have to play anywhere between 8 to 10 games. Now, it's during those 8 to 10 games in a calendar year where you have no major tournament that a head coach has to test out all the emerging talents and those that are known quantities at the national team. So you do not get so much time to prove yourself. You're going to be given 70 minutes to show what you're capable of. And if you fall short in those 70 minutes, the chances of you going back in to do another test are going to be very minimal because there are other players waiting that also need to be tested out. I'll give you an example. Let's say you play Pedro, Joao Pedro, and 50 minutes is not giving you much, or even 80 minutes, and then an Endrick comes and in 10 minutes he impresses with a couple of attempts of goal, maybe some brilliant through passes here and there. Then he's looked at as a better prospect than you who's played the 10 minutes. That's unfortunately the nature of national team football. Okay. Our Gradao game says he's playing well for Santos and is well. Okay. Hey, brother. Okay. Reluctant gamer. He has a minor injury as per ESPN News. Okay. Here in Brazil, there is nothing about injuries, and I live in the same city Neymar lives. Okay. Thank you so much, Gradao Games, for your clarifications. But I understand where Abdul is coming. Usually at this stage of the season, at this stage, and as is the history with Neymar, anything can happen. But given what is at stake for him, or understanding how he would passionately want to be at the World Cup, I think even if he suffered a minor injury, I think he would be hesitant to report it until they've gone to the actual tournament. That's what I would want to think of him. Okay. Abdul Walid says, bye, we'll come back another day. Thank you so much, Abdul, for having been part of us. Then Gratao Game says, here in Brazil, the squad called by Ancelotti was very celebrated at all. We like players like Ryan, Endrick, and Igor Thiago. Okay, that's good. That's why I think with no experience on national team, the likes of Martinelli get a chance. So, but to be fair, when you look at that team, the Brazil team that was summoned, other than Ryan and Martinelli and maybe Rafinha, who you can also play as a 10, you don't have many wingers on that team. You do not have many wingers. Then you have your Endrick. He can play off of the wing, but more likely he'll have to play centrally. Igor Thiago, he's as a traditional striker as they come. In terms of his skills on the ball, I'm sorry to say, but I've not seen any samba in him. I've not seen any samba in him. And maybe I wait to be proven otherwise. when the tournament comes around or in other games. But I've not seen any Samba with him when it comes to him. By Samba, you know what I mean. For those of you that have watched some bit of Brazilian football or at least the Brazilian national team for a bit of time. So as far as these national team squads are concerned, I've seen Egypt have put out their squad, Senegal have put out their squad. I think, what's the other team? No, I've not yet seen DRC Congo. There's a good number of national teams that have released their squads for the World Cup. South Africa have a preliminary squad. I've not indulged myself into knowing some of the players in that squad. Now, South Africa is my African version of the England national team. But Bros named his squad for Bafana Bafana, and currently it's a 32-man squad. It's a 32-man squad, but expect to see the likes of Lyle Foster in that sort of team from Bandy, to be in that, the likes of Mukwena, Rowan Williams, etc. But we'll wait for the final squad at the most opportune time. You say I'd call Savigno instead of Martinelli. Savigno? Wow. That's a hot take. Why? Savigno? I don't know how I would even describe his season. I would even struggle to describe his Manchester City career, to be honest. For the sort of prospect that he was, coming out of that electric Girona side that qualified for the UEFA Champions League, I honestly fall short of words to use to describe him. I don't know whether he's good with speed. I don't know whether he's good with dribbling. I don't know whether he's good with the final ball. I just don't know what he's good at. At least for Gabriel Martinelli, I'll tell you, he's a workaholic in terms of going back and forth. That flank, he will do that for you. He has the speed. He has the finishing touch. And if you play him closer to the box than quite very in the extended width, in other words, to be the sort of winger that hugs the byline, he can be very effective if he plays closer to the box in terms of scoring you a goal or two. So Savigno, I'd really, really struggle, Farouk says Savigno is too much playful and wasteful. Yeah, he has that thing about him, and sometimes it's very, very typical of Brazilians, of how, for lack of a better word, they may appear unserious. Like, there's a way, I understand they take the game lightly because to them it comes naturally and easy. But sometimes you want a player to be about the business in a particular game. And I've not watched a single game of football where I felt that about Savigno. To be honest, I've not felt that about Savigno. And in the summer, he was close to making the switch from Manchester City to Tottenham Hotspur. And I remember the reported fee was somewhere in the region of £60 million. And I was thinking to myself, what are Tottenham thinking on here? You already have a Richarlison who blows hot and cold, season in, season out, ever since he joined you from Everton. What are you thinking adding him on? But of course, it never materialized for him. And that's been it. Okay. Cristiano Ronaldo is a champion with Al Nassr. They finally won the Saudi Pro League with a tally of about 86 points compared to Al Hilal's 84 points. On the final day, they beat Damak by 4-1, and he scored from a direct free kick in one of those goals. So, I mean, congratulations to him. Well deserved. Kingsley Coman scored a brilliant goal based on the few highlights that I've seen. Now, I saw him celebrating, especially when he scored that goal from the direct free kick. And people love this game. But if there's anything that Cristiano Ronaldo has an obsession with, it's winning. He has an obsession with winning. And sometimes when you watch him play, especially now that he's in the advanced stages of his career, maybe nearing his retirement, when you watch his overall body language on the pitch, especially when his team does not have the ball, you may think, this guy is, what is he still doing on the pitch? Until when he gets the ball within those final third spaces, he's still capable of conjuring out something, he's still capable of that, a moment of brilliance, regardless of what you may think of his drop off in pace and, being less effective when it comes to the dribbling of it, that sort of thing. Okay. Savinho is poor at decision making and Martinelli is direct. More so, that ability is needed in national games. Gradao Game says, so Savinho or ex-Atletico Samuel Lino. This season, I have not seen enough of Samuel Lino to give you an opinion, an honest review of him. So allow me excuse myself from that bit. But from the Samuel Lino that I know, yeah, you could make a serious argument for him, Gradao Game says, I pick one of them instead of Martinelli. I completely understand. You have your reasons, but also, so anyways, Cristiano Ronaldo, another trophy to add to his cabinet. I think, I have a feeling it's been hanging over his head. And guys, the funny thing is that George Jesus, who is the head coach at Al Nassr, was at Al Hilal last season, and when they part ways with him and replaced him with Simone Inzaghi, he joined Al Nassr and they are champions. So, isn't fate such a beautiful thing? Of course, during the course of the campaign, there are these reports of how apparently the game was being mechanically engineered to their favor. But this is what I said. I said this in the context of Arsenal, and allow me to say it to the extension of Al Nassr. Across the spell of the marathon of the season, and for them, they play 34 games because the table has 18 teams. So whether you play 34 or 30 games or 33 or 38, like it is with majority teams in Europe, rarely have you ended the season and not felt that the champion is the deserved winner. Because being a champion in league football is about your overall consistency across the campaign, not in games where you showed high levels of brilliancy and you disappeared in other games. No, that's not how it works. So on average, if you're playing 34 games, we must sit down and say, out of 28 games, these guys were good. These guys were good. And I think that's the case for me that qualifies it for Al Nassr for them to be champions. They've won 28 games, they've drawn 2 and lost 4. So winning 28, that's the overall consistency that we're talking about. On the other side, meanwhile, Al Hilal have not lost a single game of football. They've won 25 and they've drawn 9. Reminds me of Benfica in the Portuguese League, who also wrapped up the season without losing a single game of football, but nonetheless could not bring themselves around to being champions because FC Porto walked away with the league trophy. Speaking of FC Porto, Thiago Silva was not summoned to the Brazil national team. Is part ways with FC Porto, and it's yet to be known whether he will go and play for another club or he will call it quits on his career. But I think he's had a very, very tremendous career. What trophy has he not won in terms of his overall career? I think maybe the World Cup, but he's won the French League One. He's won the Champions League with Chelsea in 2021. He's won a couple of league titles for himself. So really, usually that's the hallmark of European football. So for him, it's been quite a success. Okay, moving forward. Norway also put out their national team squad. Of course, but Erling Haaland, Jørgen Strand Larsson are among some of those, Alexander Soroth. But of course, it's Haaland is team. And then midfielders, they have quite a couple of those, including Arsenal's captain, who will be lifting the Premier League trophy on Sunday. Okay. Now, apparently, Harry Maguire is shocked. And this is according to Fabrizio Romano. He says, because he's been left out of the England squad, this is what he's quoted to have said, Harry Maguire, as quoted by TalkSport. He says, I'm shocked. I was confident I could have played a major part in this summer for my country after the season I've had. I've been left gutted by the decision. I wish the players all the best. Guys, what do you make of the omission of Harry Maguire with the England national team? Now, for me, like I said, my opinion is a bit sort of, my hands are a bit tied because I'm yet to see the full squad. I do not know which players have been taken at his expense for me to say, yeah, that guy deserves to be there at the expense of Harry Maguire. Mark Gay deserves to be there ahead of Harry Maguire. What's this guy's name? Ezri Konsa from Aston Villa deserves to be ahead of Harry Maguire. I do not know if there's a couple of picks from that Everton side where you have Michael Keane and Gerard Braithwaite, but I do not know if any of them has made the cut. So we have to wait and see. We have to wait and see when the full squad is eventually released. But yeah, a lot of teams are Senegal. Senegal also have some couple of misses. The likes of Malang Sarr, for the Chelsea fans, you do remember him. Okay, though they needed Maguire as an experienced leader. Okay, that's Joshua Mweskwa. Hi, Joshua Mweskwa. It's been a minute. I hope you're doing okay. Congratulations to you. Joshua is an Arsenal fan, so I'm congratulating him upon experiencing the triumph of his team, winning the Premier League title. So Senegal, of course, Ismail Sarr from Crystal Palace, the likes of Sadio Mane, Ilman Ndiaye from Everton, Ibrahim Mbaye from PSG, Nicholas Jackson spent the season with FC Bayern Munich, but is a Chelsea player. Cherif Ndiaye, Edouard Mendy, Yovan Diouf. You remember Yovan Diouf was the Senegal substitute goalkeeper that was fighting for that that was fighting for Edouard Mendy's towel at the finals of the Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. So, some of those players. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks. Thank you, sir. Okay, good. So now, also in German, there are some, players that were left out, the likes of Kevin Schade, the likes of Marc-Andre Stegen, but I don't think that Stegen could sort of, be up in arms in terms of being left out. But Manuel Neuer is there, and apparently, according to Julian Nagelsmann, Manuel Neuer will be his number one goalkeeper, I think he's done well enough to deserve to be in that role, in terms of when you look at the German squad. They have Oliver Baumann, Manuel Neuer, Alexander Noble. They have, of course, for me, what interests me, of course, Jonathan Tah is in there, Malik Thiaw, Nico Scholterbach, Antonio Rudiger, David Raum, and Nathaniel Brown, and Waldemar Anton for their defenders. For the midfielders, they have Pascal Gross at Brighton, Joshua Kimmich, Felix Mencha. Then they have Alexander Pavlovic, Angelo Stiller, Amiri, and Leon Goretzka. Then their forwards, they have Kai Havertz, Leonard Karl, Jamal Musiala, Florian Wirtz, Maximilian Beer, Jamie Lewilling, Leroy Sané, Yundav, and Nick Voltmada. Now, meanwhile, again, Julian Nagelsmann made an appeal to Kai Havertz. Jesus Christ. I don't know what's happening to me lately. It's not something I've greatly experienced. My microphone is having to go off almost all the time. As unfortunate as it sounds or feels, I don't know why. I'll need to investigate that. But looks like these days after 1 hour, they give up on me, and yet they should be doing more. Okay. So I was wrapping up with Egypt. Omar Mamosh, Mo Salah, Mohammad Trezeguet are some of the notable names that you'll find there. Of course, the goalkeeper Muhammad El Shanawi is in there. There's a name I was looking for, but it does not appear, of Muhammad El Neni. So anyways, so yeah, we are edging closer and closer to the kickoff of the World Cup that will kick off with a game between Mexico as one of the host nations against South Africa, a repeat of the opening game of the 2010 World Cup. So we have that. And yeah, I will be looking forward to each and every bit of it in terms of the action. Otherwise, for tonight, allow me call it a wrap. It's been a pleasure having you guys all on the broadcast. Those that have been with us all through it all, or those that have been, with us at the different intervals. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, I think we have a confirmation from Farouk. He says Pickford, Henderson, Trafford, Richie James, Mark Gehi, Akonsa, Ban, that's Dan Ban, Nico O'Reilly, Dejat Space, Rice, Bellingham, Kobe Mainu, Elliot Anderson, Jordan Henderson, Morgan Rogers, Adam Wharton, Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Gordon, Gerard Bowen, Ebelechi Eze, Noni Madueke, Oli Watkins, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. That's the provisional squad. Wow. And that's what I was saying. When reading through all those names in a snapshot, there's not many players that I'd think of and I say that one doesn't deserve to be in. Dejad Space, I mean, he's a fullback, so you cannot make the case for him at the expense of Harry Maguire unless you want to play Mark Gay as your right back, Richard James, well deserved. I find him a very, very important player. The goalkeepers, I do not have any qualms whatsoever. That was my expectation. Dan Ban, I think he's done okay. You need that bit of muscle. Gerard Bowen, he's at an individual level, he's had a bit of an okay season. I think he has what, an 18-goal contribution? I stand to be corrected, but in as far as he's concerned. But because his team is getting relegated, or almost, you may sort of he scored 8 goals and provided 10 assists. You may sort of I don't want to box him on the demerits of his team being close to relegation or almost getting relegated to disqualify his existence in this team. I think he's done well to deserve to be there, Jude Bellingham, I think the media will be happy with that. Some will pick on him. Kobe Mainu, well deserved. Elliot Anderson, that's a no-brainer. Marcus Rashford, okay, good. Anthony Gordon. Now, Anthony Gordon, that's going to be a hot take. I know he's done fairly well for Newcastle this season, including those 10 goals in the UEFA Champions League. But I sort of feel that he still has. Should I call it a long way to go in terms of proving us in regards to where we think he should be, or I mean, he's about 25 years of age. By now, he should be one of the best wingers that should be in as far as the Premier League is concerned. You say Bowen has a 22 goal contribution this season with 10 goals and 12 assists. Oh, impressive. Impressive. So he does deserve to be there. He does deserve to be there. So for all the players that have been omitted, I think I'll need a little bit more time to try and digest that squad and bring myself to the table of making the argument for and against, of if any, in regards to who should. Now, to be honest, you're not going to omit Gerard Bowen for Cole Palmer because he's had a better season. Nor would you do the same for Phil Foden, you know? Now, Bukayo Saka, he deserves to be there. Marcus Rashford, Spanish La Liga champion, Supercopa Hispana champion, hard to argue against that. In comparison for the left-footed Cole Palmer and Phil Foden, remember he's right-footed, can conjure out a set piece on a given day. Mariam, hi Mariam. Mariam joins us from Egypt. It's been a minute. Mariam Salah. The last time I checked, you were coming with as Anna Slot Paul had something. And I stand to be corrected if you're not the Mariam I'm making reference to. Anyways, so I think it's a decent squad. It's a decent squad. We just have to wait to see the kind of football, and the quality of it that they bring to the team. One of the challenges of I'm not from Egypt. Apologies for the mishap there. That's why I was wondering. I was wondering whether you've changed name because I have a Mariam colleague of mine who also comes with that sort of line. It's the bro that sort of misled me, but it's all good. Apologies on that. Okay, so anyways, as like I was saying, we are waiting to see the sort of quality of football that Thomas Tuchel will be able to bring. The one thing that has been very definitive of Thomas Tuchel's England side is that they do not concede goals easily. If you're going to penetrate them, you're going to work really, really hard. They do not give away so many chances. They're very good defensively. Sometimes they give you that feel of being a bit conservative in the way they approach their game. You could call it caution in a way. They do not give away too much. Maybe the stakes and the caliber of opponents that they will be playing at the World Cup will be a bit different and of bigger, a test for them overall than those they played during particularly the course of the qualifiers. We'll wait to see how they fare against those. You say I'm joking, bro. Okay, Mariam. All right. So yeah, I'll wait to see how England fare. I've said time and again that for me, England, Portugal, Spain, France are some of the favorites for the tournament. As those are some of the teams that I'm looking at to go really, really deep in the tournament. Of course, Argentina, because they still have their head coach is it Scolani? I hope I'm pronouncing the name well. The Argentine head coach, and Argentina still have Messi. They still have sort of that core squad that won the World Cup 2022. And even though the likes of McAllister have not had a brilliant season, they still have good players. The Lautaro Martinez of this world. We wait to see the sort of team that will be summoned for the World Cup for them. But yeah. Anyways, guys, it's been 1 hour and 20 minutes. Allow me to call it a wrap. Thank you so much, Mariam. Thank you so much, Farouk, aka Gladiator. Mweskwa Joshua, always a pleasure. Gradao Games, always a pleasure to see you around. Abdul Walid, thank you so much. Reluctant Gamer, good to always have you. What's his name? Okay, Pedri, thank you so much for chipping in when you did. Rio Dandy, always a pleasure. Anfield, The Red, as well as Taba, thank you so much for having been part of tonight's broadcast. Let's link up again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for another episode of this conversation about football. and we'll look to digest more of that from the World Cup squads, but also start to look towards the weekend because it does get underway. The Spanish La Liga is going to be wrapping up. Same applies for the Italian Serie A. Same applies for the Premier League. In German, there's still a game left to play between Bayern Munich and Wolfsburg, I think in the DFB Pokal Cup final. So there's that. I've seen there's a game in Coupe de France. So I think that one is tomorrow, I suspect. We also have some games coming in tomorrow, the Italian Serie and things like that. So we'll get to look at some of the fixtures that are left for you guys to enjoy at the tail end of this season. Otherwise, stay blessed for now. Until next time. Bye-bye.